Welcome, guys. We had the Miami Grand Prix, and what a race. We got action all the way through, right up until the end. And it was a race of execution versus speed. Who got it right? Let's get to it. The Miami Grand Prix delivered a fantastic race in the end. Drama throughout from lap one. Kimi Antonelli, Max Verstappen. Kimi Antonelli actually got a decent start this time around. Both him and Max locking up, which meant Charles Leclerc got through into turn one. Like I've been calling out since qualifying. Quite proud of myself on that one. And then what we didn't expect was a spin from Max Verstappen. Seen him drop down a few places. Can't remember the last time we've seen that happened. And then we started with a spin. We ended with a spin, with the dramatic spin of Charles Leclerc right at the end with his fight with Oscar Piastri for that podium position. Was he playing too many games? Was he on the back foot already and just doing whatever he could to try and hold on to that podium position? We'll go through it. But we'll start at the front. It was really a battle of wit and execution and strategy, wasn't it, really? We've seen some absolutely fail. Red Bull got it wrong with Max Verstappen. In the end, they pitted under the safety car, thinking a cheap pit stop. And if we need to go really long, we can do that then. And then, if the rain comes, we're in a decent position from there. But didn't quite pan out that way for it, did it, in the end? That early pit stop really restricted them in what they could do from there on out. Max drove the only race he could, and got lucky with an extra position that he picked up from Charles Leclerc's spin, but otherwise he would have dropped way down in the end, not the race he would have wanted. We had Charles Leclerc leading, and again Ferrari going for an early pit stop. They went really to cover the undercut of George Russell, and actually it didn't work out for the pair of them, did it? Both getting stuck in or behind in traffic and behind slower cars. Took them a while to get through them, and their pace wasn't enough where you think, yes, they're making real undercut moves on the guys ahead. And actually, by the time they came out, they had significant work to do to catch and pass Max Verstappen and others around. So probably not the best call on their side of the garage. And well, the guys that did get it right are the guys that are up at the top, aren't they? And Kimi Antonelli with the perfect undercut 1 lap before Lando Norris, and it was just enough because he managed to pass Norris on track as he's warming up his tyres to get into that net first place as it was, because they were both still hunting down Max Verstappen, who'd stayed out on his old tyres. Both Antonelli and Norris made easy work of Verstappen, unlike probably Charles Leclerc did, and it was just a race between them two. Norris was pretty gutted because he thought it was his race, actually. He said, it was just down to strategy and the undercut, and had we pitted 1 lap early, which we should have done, it was our win, and he was gutted. He was effectively a win lost for him. But what a comeback from McLaren. Their race pace was absolutely brilliant when we thought that actually they might be struggling now, especially after qualifying. They had a brilliant sprint, but then in qualifying, they qualified way down, a 4th and a 7th start for them. And then they were talking about, actually, this is really the pace that we had. The sprint flattered us a little bit, and therefore you were expecting them to sort of then struggle to make their way forward. But in race conditions, they were brilliant again. And the big benefits of what they've carried in last year's car was how they use their tyres and look after their tyres has carried forward into this year's iteration, and that's something that they've really mastered. Having McLaren, they're able to just get these tyres to just keep going and going and going, and that's what nearly gave them the win again. Norris closing on Antonelli, but Antonelli doing just enough to keep Lando Norris back, and that was really the crux of the race. And I think it was also clouded by this whole potential of rain, because every engineer's radio call was, there's rain in 5 laps, there's rain in 20 laps, there's a light bit of rain now, there's going to be rain for 5 laps, there's going to be rain for 10 laps. Nobody really knew what the hell they were talking about, to be honest, when it came down to it. And then we seen Mercedes and Russell blink first, and they probably went a little bit too early. Deg was worse than we've seen in the previous years, because it was a straightforward medium hard, and both tyres would have gone an extremely long way. But this time around, they were really hard on both tyres. I was surprised with Kimi Antonelli in his race, 13-lap old hards, and he was saying the rears had gone, and you could visibly see him sliding the rear of that Mercedes in parts of that race, but he managed it brilliantly well, and a fantastic win for him. The first driver to get 3 podiums in a row and 3 wins, 3 straight conversions, the first man in history to do that. The young Italian Valentino Rossi styling he's got on him, hasn't he? He's got that little something about him, and he was absolutely brilliant. The undercut was the race-winning move, and Antonelli drove such a mature race, and that is probably frightening if you're George Russell, because it was such a brilliant job from him. It was a weekend where if you wanted to win, you had to step up and just show you've got that little bit extra about you. And Kimi Antonelli had to dig deep for this race win, especially when you see the pace of the McLarens. He had to do something special for that pole position. He did that, and then he converted that to a brilliant win. And I think the layout of the Miami circuit made it a little bit more difficult, and track position proved more crucial, despite us having these joke overtake buttons passes that we've seen in the previous Grand Prix. They were there, but not to the same extent that we've seen for the first Grand Prix, and that's I mean, we're talking about all this energy stuff again because this is a high energy track, Miami, so they didn't really have to worry too much about the lift and coast, so it wasn't quite the same issue. Everybody was able to use enough battery, and it was probably just strategic on how you did that, but really solid job, and it made a good racing, and we weren't getting fake overtakes. Like we've seen before, an overtake genuinely was a genuine overtake in a lot of ways, because we were still sort of hitting and hoping, thinking, is he going to get him back around the next corner? We've seen that, but a lot of that was strategic, and we've seen that before in other races where you've got 2 DRS zones, and it's, do you pass on this one or do you pass on the next one? So I don't think people can jump on that too much personally, but we'll see what happens next time out in Canada, and hopefully we get similar. I mean, in Canada it's a bit different because there's genuinely over one overtaking space down into that final chicane, and we sometimes see some overtaking into turn 1, but other than that we don't really see anything. Maybe at the back of the hairpin occasionally, but we don't see that too often, because you know you're going to get passed down the straight into the chicane if you're not fast enough. So I'm sure we'll see some games there, but it was actually good racing and probably honest overtaking this time around. So have the reg gone far enough? Time will tell. But there we have on that one. McLaren fast enough, but not winning enough. They were the fastest car of the weekend. They dominated sprint with a 1-2, and you just thought, geez, this is embarrassing for Mercedes. Where has this come from? They just could barely get one car on track for first few Grand Prix. I mean, they both started just Japan, didn't they, really, in the end? Oscar couldn't get that car going, and now they're the fastest team, but are they the best team? They're proving that they've still got work to do in that area, and it's probably why they were so keen to get people like GP into that outfit, to just take them to that next level when it comes to that crucial, clear-cut decision-making. And I think that's also something that we can throw at Ferrari, which we'll get to them next. But McLaren, again, shown what they were doing with Red Bull, where they gave Max wins by just not having the cutthroat decision-making calls when it was needed, and they lost this race on strategy, as they've lost many races before on strategy, and that's something that they need to work on. Norris was effectively really downbeat on that point. But even with that, there was points where within the race where you thought Norris was catching Kimi Antonelli, and he just couldn't quite get into that 1 second overtake mode or close to it within like the half-second gap where you thought, right, he can really make a move now. And Kimi is one of the best drivers I've seen in these current regs of how to use the overtakes. Whatever it is, you've seen it all race. He's been one of the few drivers that when he's made an overtake with these regulations, he's been one of the few to get retaken. It's happened very, very few times to him. If you watched a few of my earlier race reviews, I've said that a few times now, that once he makes a move, it's very rare that he gets repassed. I'm not saying it's never happened, but if you watch it compared to every other driver up at the front, we've seen Charles and Lewis be repass. Same with Russell, but Antonelli was when he's done it, he's tend to make it stick, and he then got off in made him run for it and got his wins, which has been really, really impressive from him. So he's absolutely mastered that. And I think that's what helped him again with his defence on Norris. But McLaren can be really, really happy. They've got the fastest car. They've come back with a double podium finish after a 1-2 in the sprint and a double podium finish in the main race after the way the qualifying had gone. You'd have generally said they'd be happy with that, but they were a little bit disappointed because I think the race win was on the cards. They didn't take it. It would have been a 1-3. Was looking for more like a 2-4 for much of the race, but they'll be happy. Double points finish, which moves us on to Ferrari and how they were given that third place on the podium. McLaren was Ferrari's collapse again. What seems like under pressure. Leclerc was gone from looking like he could take the win, to then dropping a couple of places in all of a few minutes. He got a spin. He's had a penalty since, which we've seen him drop down further positions. Lewis Hamilton was only 6th. Lewis's race was really more compromised by the collision with Franco Colapinto. But he's come this weekend and he's not really got quite on top of the car like we've seen in the first 3 races. So he'll be hoping that whatever's changed, he can quite get back on top of it a little bit. Are we seeing the changes now coming into effect where like we've seen with Isaac Hadjar and we'll say with Lewis Hamilton now, the gap between teammates has grown, and is that now because the cars and the drivers can push the cars to the edge a little bit more, probably further than where Lewis could go or was happy to go, and that's why we're seeing them guys now like Max Verstappen's and Charles Leclerc, qualifying specialists, pull that extra little gap on their teammate compared to what we've seen in the first 3 races, because before it was you had to be more conservative, you had to manage better, and that overall gave you a faster lap, and that wasn't quite in Charles and Max's DNA. They were full throttle, giving it every full beans all round. But I mean, that was Lewis Hamilton's race. Really, it was a pretty boring race for him. Charles Leclerc was like I said, drama all over, looking like he could be fighting for the win. Should have got the win. And then a horrible call for the team. I think they were just too busy looking back, I think, when George Russell got the early pits and he went for the undercut. It was still too early, and Charles was actually really annoyed because it's kind of just didn't consult him on that point. Charles was probably more looking at the rain. The rain never came, so in that sense, I think Ferrari got it right. It wasn't about the rain, it was then about strategy, but they got that point wrong as well, didn't they? Because they left him out and was a little bit vulnerable. Not as vulnerable as Max Verstappen was, but he didn't have the tyres because everybody else ahead of him, Oscar, the McLaren, and Antonelli, all went longer, and that was the right call in the end. I think they just thought, as comparable last year, the deg was like so low that they could just waltz to the end and didn't really have to worry about too much management on the tyre side of things. But they were wrong, and they got it wrong. Charles I mean, you just feel sorry for this kid in some ways, but it was all on him. He said the final lap spin. He was playing tactics, wasn't he? You could see that he's done that very, very well when battling with his teammates in the early Grand Prix, and he's come up trumps. So he didn't have his wing up, did he, or the overtake on? He was harvesting when Piastri passed him. It's almost like he let him pass because he knew it was almost inevitable, and then tried to fight it back and get the move done again into turn one, and then it'd have been a fight to the line. Because the passes weren't happening halfway down the straight, so he could have done it and kept that position. He would have just had to hold off turn 17, really. But I think that's why he kept the extra battery to fight for the final lap. And then he got a horrible exit, then another mistake mid-corner, and he went for a spin, smashed his front wheel. Luckily, it wasn't race ending there and then. He limped home. Did finish ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but he was given a 20-second penalty for driving the car in unsafe conditions and just a lot of corner cutting, which we've seen happen to other drivers before. So not really a surprise there, but it's horrible from Charles. He's now gone from looking like he could have been on for a win. Podium was definitely on for a lot of that race, bar the final lap. And he's missed out. Instead of being fourth, he then lost places to Russell and Verstappen on the line, and then got a penalty since, and he's finished 8th in the end. So bad to worse from him. Not lost a whole heap of points. It's not exactly you've gone from first to fourth, but still that will hurt. Charles was Ferrari's main man in this race. They've bought an awful lot of upgrades and they haven't worked again on this Ferrari. So that's something that they definitely need to work on going into the next few races, is to try and get on top of the upgrades. And they need to sort of manage to try and do what McLaren are doing, is what every upgrade just seems to work. So whatever issue that they're having in terms of correlation, they need to fix it quick. It doesn't look like they've quite got on top of them problems that we've had of previous years. So an awful lot of work to be done from them for them. Red Bull, Max Verstappen, quite a scrappy race as well, as you could just say it. Max, early issues with the spin. He recovered well into P5, you'd have to say, but the strategy call on their side was an absolute stinker, wasn't it? Went for the safety car pit. And I didn't quite understand it because there was all the talk of rain, and then rain had come down. You've just basically pitted twice and still didn't make sense. Unless you thought there were going to be 2 rain showers and there would have been a bigger rain shower at the end of the race. And therefore, he could have just done this early cheap pit stop under the safety car while everyone else pitted. He would have gained position where he was, leading when everyone's pitted. But he didn't quite have the tyres then to make it to the end. But if it then did rain in a second cell of rain, he would have looked a mega star. And it was that kind of hit and hope strategy from Red Bull because they knew they didn't quite have it. I've got to say the best innovation of the rear wing goes to them, the Max Arena rear wing that they've called it now, isn't it? It was a huge hole in the back of that rear wing, which really helped him. You could clearly see the difference that it made for him. It was so difficult for cars to get close and overtake, and he will be a megastar in Canada if they can get on top of the cars. I won't put it past him to stick it on pole and defend like an absolute lion down into that chicane. So they could earmark a potential good race for Max Verstappen on there. Isaac Hadjar with that crash early doors, which caused the first safety car. So there's now been a safety car in every Grand Prix race weekend so far. I expect more in Canada because there generally is a high level of safety cars in Canada than anywhere else. The way it's gone so far this season with reliability and the like, that's what we've kind of come to expect. So, disappointing from Isaac Hadjar. He was furious. I've not seen him that angry for an absolute age. A mistake puts him in the wall, and in a race where it looked like if you just kept it on track, kept your head, good points were on. It's the main theme that ran through the race really was this look up at the skies for conditions that didn't deliver the chaos. The rain was expected, but never really came. We got a few splats of rain, which was nothing for it. The teams prepared for chaos, but it was just a strategic race in the end. We've seen this time and time and over the years in Formula One, where they stop looking at the sky or what's in front of them and just going on too much in this prediction. They're looking at the charts, looking at the rain charts, and it's going to come, it's not going to come, it's going to come, it's not going to come. Do we wait? Do we pit? Do we wait? Do we pit? And these sort of questions eating you up in the midst of battle. And you then, it was, instead of being chaos, it was a chess match. And it really was a brilliant win. And Mercedes have proved why they, as a Nicolai from Carlos Sainz, really are smooth operators. I'm not going to do that again. But yeah, smooth operation from Mercedes. They've been absolutely brilliant of that. And no surprise, it's Bono and Antonelli that have come out on top. We've seen that with Bono and Lewis in the years gone by. Bono is a really underrated driver engineer, isn't he? And he'll be scratching his head as why he's not probably got the mega contract that we've seen GP get moving across to McLaren, but I'm hoping he's on a good number at Mercedes, and I'm sure they love everything that he brings to the team there. But yeah, that was the key story of the race. Is there a new storyline in the F1 World Championship? Is it now Antonelli versus Norris? Is this the new rivalry? We've seen a sprint dominated by Norris. We've seen a race win snatched by Antonelli with an absolutely phenomenal pole position and drive. Same weekend, opposite outcomes, speed with execution, really. Like I said, McLaren had the speed, Mercedes executed the race, and that was the key difference. Small mistakes, huge consequences. Kimi Antonelli in sprint, he got that penalty, lost points. Norris, race strategy, lost the race win. Charles Leclerc, spin, lost the podium. So it was kind of that theme, and it was always the fine line. And if you're on the right side of that fine line, it's a huge win for you in Formula One. The undercut decided pretty much everything, didn't it, really, in the end? But too much of an undercut and you were looking like a fool in the case of sort of Max Verstappen and Ferrari engineers. So we can forgive Ferrari a little bit in terms of strategy on that one. The guys around them, Max had pitted way early. We had seen Russell pit a lap earlier than they did. And we've generally seen Mercedes' strategy is the lap Russell pits, the next lap Antonelli pits, but it didn't quite go that way. Antonelli ran longer. He kept matched it effectively with the McLarens, and it was a brilliant call in the end. He got the pass on track, got the win, and that was really the story of the race. Fine margins. Formula One delivered. It was a brilliant race, strategic race in the end. I hope you enjoyed the watch along. I'll be doing more of them for next time out in Canada. But that, in short, is effectively my takeaways from this Grand Prix weekend. It was spectacular, actually. The sprint race was not brilliant, but it was good. And the sprint race, or the main race, just had drama throughout, wasn't it? We had this the spin at the beginning, the rain, no rain strategy, who, how, and what will win out. And we got dramatic conclusions on the side of Charles Leclerc and a brilliant win. 3 wins in a row. The first driver in history, the first I think it's since Senna and Schumacher has got 3 pole positions back to back, and he's the first driver in history to convert all 3 pole positions into race wins, and this one was really all down to him. The car wasn't quite there, as we've seen in the hands of George Russell, and he did an absolutely brilliant job. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please smash the like button, subscribe if you're new and you enjoy the content so you can watch out for future stuff coming. Thanks for watching. See you next time.